Hello and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show.
Don't touch that
This is the #1 podcast for real estate investing, and each episode covers what you need to know to find and flip deals right now.
Wow!
Break free of the chains that are holding you back and join us on today's episode.
Hey, what's going on? It's Jason Lucchesi, and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show. I am so excited that you are here with us today. I've got a good friend with me. Known him since about 2009, and I have no idea why he hasn't gotten on here sooner. We're well over 100 episodes, but I finally got this wise guy to get on here, Mr. Brian Meara. Brian, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. We've known each other for well over 10 years now, and you're doing a lot of great things over there on the East Coast. You're very well diversified, but what we had you come on the show today, man, was to talk about what's going on in your world, what's going on in the marketplace, because you have a lot to share. You've done hundreds, if not thousands, of transactions over the years, especially with doing stuff with your students and real estate transactions as an agent. Your wife is an agent too. You guys are heavily involved in real estate and also some other things as well, which is cool. It's always good to be diversified. But for folks that don't know you, Brian, like I do, why don't you share a little bit about yourself? Not all of the stuff that I know, but share a little bit about yourself.
All right. So it all started, I was in line at the grocery store. No, I'm just kidding. That's it. But no, the story is, so 2007, I was actually going through a divorce and went out and got my real estate license just to make ends meet. And that was obviously pre-crash, right? About a year before the crash, give or take. And short sales had already started popping up everywhere. So as a new agent, I didn't really have much of a marketing budget to farm areas and send out, mail pieces and things like that. So the agents in the office that were familiar with short sales were smart enough not to want to deal with them because they're a nightmare, as you know. Yeah. And so I'll never forget, I joined with Keller Williams, and at the time an inner office email came out and said, hey, there's a listing over here outside of Philadelphia. Who wants it? Well, the third time it came around, I figured, well, I'll take it. I mean, I would love a listing, right? I'm brand new. And not smart enough to realize that 160 other agents passed it up for a reason, right? And, I successfully closed that short sale. It took 9 months, made some money on it as an agent, of course. And that was the key, as an agent. So for about 2 years, I worked heavily in short sales. I built up a team. I had negotiators working for me, to do all the negotiations for me. Once it reached a point, I had too many deals. I couldn't do them myself, and had buyer's agents, had BPO agents working for me. So I had a nice little system as an agent. But in those 2 years, I worked predominantly with investors. And so the math stopped making sense. I mean, I would go a $200,000 house. I got my 3% at $6,000. Keller takes a third. I'm left with $4,000. Somebody like you or an investor flips the house and makes $40,000. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. I did all the work. I negotiated it. I listed it. I got the buyer. Like, what's going on here? I'm making 10% of what they're making, right? So that's when it all began. That was in 2000. Actually, that was kind of late 2008. 2009 is when I started networking with the people in Florida, South Florida. That's when we met, 2009. That's exactly the time. And so, and then I just switched hats. I mean, I've always kept my license, but I kind of put it in referral status so I could focus on being a full-time investor. No more listing homes and driving buyers around. Did 2 years of that. I was done with that. And, I did build up quite a big business. I mean, at the time, by 2010, I had over 100 deals in my pipeline. We were closing 5-10 deals a month, either buying them in rehab, doing light rehab and then reselling, held a few for rentals, wholesaled them out on a few of them, released the interest for a fee. And that's kind of, how I got started in that.
No, that's awesome, man. And, I know that was a while ago that you kind of got started. We both, kind of went through the same training. And, I remember when Facebook was just kind of getting slowly out there, we would be on there and we'd be communicating with each other. But it's crazy how things have come, because the recession hit and it really was detrimental to the economy. But, flash forward to today, and before we, hit record on this, and we're doing this right now, you're still doing short sales. And a lot of people across the country don't realize that, that's not going to be a situation that ever corrects itself, right? There's always going to be people that lose jobs, lose family members. There could be something detrimental that happens to the house, something to a family member. They might have to move. There's always going to be something that's going to put somebody in a position to where they might not be able to pay their mortgage anymore, and they need somebody to come in and, as an investor, come in, make an offer, work with the bank. So what are you seeing in today's market, today's economy? And I know you do stuff with a lot of folks across the country, but what are you seeing on the East Coast right now? Are you still seeing like people still struggling and they need to have a short sale done?
Yeah, always. And that's one of the things I learned is that short sales were always around. They just became popular in 2008 when the bottom fell out. So they were everywhere. And obviously that's, people lost millions in the crash. And, I went the other way. I made a fortune because I focused on the market, the distressed market, as you did in your own respect. And, did very well because, look, the situation happened, right? I didn't cause the divorce, the cancer, the bankruptcy, whatever the job loss, but they're the things that will cause a short sale. And until those things go away in our society, and they never will, there will always be short sales, especially after the correction and when equity started coming back. Sure. That's why I stopped selling my course and I stopped doing the whole, education piece specific to short sales, because there wasn't a nationwide demand anymore. So I did pull back and come more local. And that's when I opened up the local real estate training academies, the schools, if you will, 2 in Philadelphia, 2 in New Jersey, where I could run workshops and on everything. Every aspect of real estate investing. But we always did talk about short sales primarily because New Jersey back then was let's just say the capital of foreclosures. They led the nation for quite some time. And in fact, I don't know if they still do. I think if not, they're number 2 or 3. But for whatever reason, New Jersey has a large number of distressed properties. Let's put it that way. People going into foreclosure. Now, whether they successfully short sale out of it or it ends up going to auction, of course, and then the REO market. But at the end of the day, New Jersey is just a great hotbed for that. I now live in Pennsylvania. I'm from New Jersey, but the border's, 10 minutes that way. So it's easy for me to, access that. My family's all still there. So I do most of my business in New Jersey when it comes to short sales. And more recently, nationwide, there are certain pockets, right? So I'm looking at a few deals in Houston. I'm looking at a few deals in Texas, as a whole, numerous different cities. Florida, of course, buddy of mine is really doing very well in the short sale business in Orlando. And he's telling me that he actually works all the counties in Florida, and he has this service where he's accessing all of the notice of defaults, and he has these campaigns, and he's actually picking up about 10, he's just picking up 10 to 15 homes a month. So I think it's a great market, and it's kind of interesting because Florida has always led, or all the sand states really, right? When it comes to the distress market, it hits there first, right? Then Nevada, Arizona, California, Florida, right? So if you look at those markets today, there are not statewide, but there are certain pockets of distressed activity. And a lot of people are talking about another correction, not necessarily a crash. One of the things a mutual friend of ours, business acquaintance, Jeff Watson, always said, he actually told me about this stat and I researched it, and it's actually very true. You can go back well over 100 years, and the real estate market every 8 to 10 years has had somewhat of a full-blown crash or a correction. And if you tie the last correction, which was a crash in 2008, we're overdue. We're about to, enter 2020 here. So I don't know. Are you hearing stuff on that?
I said back in, I think this was my first time that I got invited to come speak on a big stage. It was Jack Sternberg's Noteworthy conference.
Right.
And I remember saying, I'm like, this is cyclical. Everything happens in waves. And I said something's going to happen around late 2018, early 2019, and I was wrong. And I didn't foresee Trump coming in and doing what he did. I didn't see him even potentially running for 2016. And we could all say what we want about Trump, but it is what it is. Unemployment's at an all-time low. Dow is up substantially at historical paces and records. We're seeing a thriving economy, which we didn't see coming or foreseeing or projecting from especially key economists, right? We didn't see any of that coming. I do see a correction happening. Do I see it happening like what happened in like when that correction happened in November of 07? I don't think it will, because the thing is, subprime loans, are pretty much non-existent. They are existing, but non-existent to where, I was in the mortgage business and we were doing 2-year arms, 3-year arms, and at the end of those terms, their interest rate would go up like 3-4%, and people couldn't afford those anymore. Same with the pay option arms. You had 4 different payment options, and people would always choose the lowest one. And what would happen, that lowest one would be a negative amortization payment. So those don't really exist quite like they do anymore. But here's the thing, and I want to know your opinion on this. I think what's going to be the kicker this time around is we're over it's with revolving debt and student loan debt. We're on pace for like almost $4 trillion with just that side of it. And I think that's going to be a component to where it's going to be a kicker for a lot of folks. And it's going to be in a different way. It's not going to be like it was last time. But folks, their student loans are getting astronomical for payment wise. Once they get out of deferred status, meaning for folks that don't know, deferred status is, you have a certain period after college, and then, once that deferred is done, you have a period to where you don't have to make payments, and then all of a sudden you have to make the payments. And people are getting into cars that they can't really afford. They're getting houses that they can't afford. And it's all, unfortunately, it's to keep up with the Joneses. It's not to be happy inside. It's to have a happy exterior to show people, hey, I'm happy. So what's your take on that? What do you think is going to be kind of like a catalyst?
I think the student loan crisis is exactly that. And it's one of those things where I was introduced through one of my contacts. I was made aware there's a program. It's some type of a software program. And basically what it does, and I'm still researching it myself, but basically what it does is it teaches a concept that I used to teach in my real estate schools called velocity banking. And so what people don't understand is that most debt instruments are based upon amortization. And so if that's the case, you're on the wrong end of the scale. Like that's, first 7 years of a mortgage, people know you're not even really touching your principal, things of that nature. But it applies to many different, debt instruments, student loans. I mean, it's pretty bad. Yep. What this software does is there are certain algorithms where people, they purchase it, right? And that's why I'm looking into becoming an affiliate for it, for complete transparency. But what's cool about it is you put in all your debts, right? So you put in your student loans, you put in your credit card, your car notes, your mortgage, your line of credit, whatever, home equity. And the software, the algorithm changes on a daily basis. So it knows and it tells you make this payment here, send this much here. And it literally gets people out of debt, and it'll take a 30-year mortgage and have to pay it off in 5 to 7 years, initially without making any extra payments. It's just restructuring the debt from an amortized note into a simple interest in the form of a line of credit, and then pulling from that line of credit and shifting the money over here. A lot of people, and Jason, we used to teach that at my school. I found it was very difficult for most people to, number one, comprehend, and number two, to manage, because they'd either have scraps of paper or spreadsheets, right, that they created trying to say, well, do I send this here, this, and this thing does it all. So I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So I'm still researching that, but if that turns out to be what I think it is, that's something that I'd like to, get out there for people, as an affiliate, of course. But I think it's awesome because so many people in this country that could frankly use something like that,
Yeah, I think most folks don't know about reallocating debt, and even doing some small little band-aids, like even like getting like a temporary credit card to where it's 0% if you shift over balances for a year. That could be extremely helpful when you're not having to pay a 19 or 29% interest rate, even if it's for a year. I see a lot of people shifting from credit card to credit card. Now, again, it's a band-aid. And I told folks when I was in the mortgage industry, do the biweekly mortgage payment, because they'll take a 30-year down to a 23.5, and you could just make a little bit extra more. You could get that mortgage paid off substantially, but a lot of folks aren't educating. I wish in high school they would actually prepare you for life after high school and then also prep you if, college is your thing. I didn't do the college thing.
Neither did I.
But, prep you for school, because most of the time we don't need most of the crap that's being taught in school, unless you're going specifically into like engineering,
Right.
or you're going to be a statistician, or you're going into some sort of specialized fields like a doctor, or something that's very specialized knowledge. Most people aren't going to use algebra once they
Right.
graduate high school. Nobody's going to be using geometry. Yes,
Right.
it's great to know our history, but for the most part, I think the only class that was available when I was in school, there was economics, and the teacher that was teaching it was not, she wasn't wealthy. She was, just making the normal teacher type salary, and I think
Yeah.
teachers obviously should be compensated a little bit more in our country, but that's another podcast episode. But I think somebody that's teaching econ should be somebody that's from a wealthy stature, and can be
Yeah.
teaching you things that can be taught, and can be learned from a mind at that level too. You got to think a 17, 18-year-old that's a senior in high school, because that was the only time that we could take that class, because that was a required class in the state of Illinois. We had to pass that, and we also had to pass U.S. history that year, because that's when we went over the Constitution, and we had to know all that stuff. But it was
Required for real estate or for college?
no, for high school.
High
You
school.
had to pass those. Those were required in the state of Illinois. I don't know if they are now, to pass. And then, I think there should be freshman to senior year of high school. There should be some sort of a financial thing, like financial 101, and then it keeps graduating on up. That's what I personally think.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, it's just, there's not a lot of stuff. They just, teach you the same things that they've been teaching you for decades now, that our parents learned, and our parents learned. So nothing's been changing in the school system, in my opinion. But let me ask you this, and we're going to kind of shift gears here, because for some of our listeners here that don't know what a short sale is, can you explain what that is, and how that's like, how it all is done? Because some folks don't know what that is.
It's actually very simple. It's just when you owe more money on your mortgage or mortgages than the house is worth. So let's say your mortgage is a $300,000 mortgage, and now for whatever reason your home is only worth $280,000. The neighborhood went down, or you didn't keep it up, or whatever the case may be. But when your mortgage, the debt on the home is worth more than the value, and you are going to sell or have to sell, as one of the different reasons that we mentioned earlier, the divorce, bankruptcy, loss, job loss, etc., illness, you have to sell your home, right? But you can't, because there's a deficit. You owe 280, or excuse me, you owe 300. It's only worth 280. Then you take in all the closing costs. Maybe you walk with 250, figure 10%, give or take, right? And you got a $50,000 shortage. So what you have to do is go to the bank and prove that there was a hardship, there was that illness, divorce, blah, 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 we talked about.
Yep.
And I only can get this for my house, but I know I owe you this. And then they have to forgive the difference and just basically write it off. But they're only going to do that if there is a serious situation. It's not, I just want to move, or I want to get rid of this house because I don't have any equity in it. They're not going to allow that. They'll just foreclose on you. The other thing to know is that you do have to be in default. You have to be at least one payment behind to approach the bank for a short sale. If you're current on your mortgage, they're not even going to entertain it. Why would they entertain, taking a loss if you're still paying them every month, frankly? And so that's just the situation. So I always tell people you have to be at least 30 days behind, and you have to have what they call a justifiable hardship, which means it's permanent in nature, right? And you're not going to be able to get caught up, and you're not going to be able to get back on your feet with this house. And the best thing for you to do is move on. And if you present that case properly to the bank, most times they will allow you to sell short, and there's your short sale, to move on with your life.
Now, is this something that you feel you need a real estate license for?
Absolutely not. I always told the investors and the people I ran through my coaching and mentoring program, it's certainly an advantage. And I do know quite a few investors, I don't know what the statistic is, maybe half, maybe less, do have their license for many different reasons. You're going to access different, the MLS, let's just start with that, right? You have full access to the MLS as a realtor, real estate agent, should I say. You're going to have access to different groups and clubs and a local office that you join, and put you around more people to do more deals as an investor. So I always suggested that getting your license was a good thing to do if that makes sense for one.
Yep.
Legally speaking, it's not a requirement. No.
So let me ask you about this, because I know back around 2011, they were really doing like witch hunts
Yeah.
for us doing short sales. You know, I even talked to our mutual friend, Jeff Watson, who's like one of the leading experts for us as real estate investors. And I even talked to his good friend, who is the former Attorney General in Ohio, Mark Dan. And, you know, they really were cracking down on if you go and talk to homeowners about this. And, you know, I wasn't doing this. I was never telling somebody, hey, I could stop or help you avoid the actual foreclosure auction. They were coming out saying, hey, you needed to become a mortgage foreclosure consultant, which was them, I guess, just trying to add additional revenue to the state, because what you had to do to become a mortgage foreclosure consultant is get what's called a surety bond. And you get the surety bond, and that's, you know, going to be anywhere from $800 to $1,200 per year to be, you know, a bonded individual to go out and say that. But I was just an investor making offers on properties, and there was just people doing it in a scumbag type of a way,
Yeah.
and really screwing people over and saying, hey, we can stop this. It's not a problem. And the only people that could really stop it are attorneys with like a temporary restraining order. That's the only real way to stop it. And
Yeah.
you know, by having an attorney, you know, put out a TRO, temporary restraining order, that's really the only way. So what are you seeing in today's market? Have they kind of shifted? Because at the time, the AGs in a lot of states were, you know, they're supposed to look out for the consumer, right? But it felt like they were looking out for the banks.
So when I got out of jail, I figured, no, I'm just kidding. Which is funny. I joke because starting back when I first started as the investor, you know, back in 2009, I had people in my office in Keller Williams, so many people, oh, you can't flip short sales, you're going to go to jail. And they didn't know I had partnered up with Jeff Watson and had all the paperwork locked down. And in fact, Jason, I did the exact opposite. Not only would I never, in the form of marketing and direct mail and, you know, whatever we did, or certainly in person or on the phone, ever make any commitments, any guarantees. I would never say we're going to save your credit, we're going to, you know, avoid foreclosure. Horrible things to do. Just as an investor, you're putting a target on your back, right? Regardless of what state you're in.
Yeah.
We did the opposite. We would clearly let them know, and we actually had, I'm sure you remember, an affidavit of understanding that they would not only have to acknowledge and initial by each point, but then sign in the presence of a notary. And we kept that document. I am not a foreclosure rescue specialist. I am not a debt counselor. I am not offering you any. In fact, you won't make a dime. Your credit will be destroyed. We put everything in there to clear it before we would even start the deal. We would have them sign that, if not before, at the time of the execution of the sales and purchase contract, or else I wasn't going to do the deal, because I wanted them to know in no uncertain terms, can I offer anything? You unfortunately are in a bad situation. Again, many reasons for that. I didn't cause it, but I'm going to do my best to help the situation, because the only thing I could guarantee them is that if the bank works with me and if the numbers make sense, I'm going to buy the house. Yeah. And if I buy the house, that means it didn't foreclose. And if it doesn't foreclose, you don't have a foreclosure on your record. Now, that's a factual statement. No guarantee, sure. Right? No promises. But this is my intention as an investor buyer to purchase your home. And if that happens and the bank agrees to sell a short sale, well, then I can legally and factually say, well, then obviously the foreclosure won't take place. But you had to be careful with that, right? You had to be careful, you know?
Yeah, no, you absolutely had to be extremely careful. You know, we would tell the folks like what would happen, you know, if you did go through foreclosure versus short sale. Obviously, There's a substantial rebound difference from getting yourself back on track. Also, too, most folks don't know is if you're in a security clearance type position and you have a foreclosure on your record, you could probably get fired. Yeah. The other thing, too, is employers check your credit, a soft pull periodically, and if they see anything that warrants a full pull, they're going to do that. And if they're going to see that you had a foreclosure, that could be cause for termination for most employers. So, I think what most folks, the AGs especially, were coming down, and they were coming down at people that were doing it, and they necessarily were like, well, even though they signed that affidavit of understanding, you were still marketing to them. So I told them all of the marketing pieces I had, and the marketing pieces I had was I was just sending them a letter letting them know I'm an investor. I'm looking to purchase properties in your area, and your property happened to come up as one that we would like to make an offer on. I never said to them like, hey, I never marketed to them as, hey, we're foreclosure people.
Sure,
We can
right.
help out with that, and I think that's key. What's your take on that?
Well, interestingly enough, and a lot of people don't know this about me, I have never ever done even one direct mail campaign. I created, as I sold in my course, Flip Free Profits, which of course we don't sell anymore, but I created what I call the realtor referral system. So here was my thought process, being a realtor. Who is going to know about a short sale or a situation, let's say with the mortgage first? It's going to be when someone calls the bank to refinance and they find out they can't because they're 3 payments behind.
Right.
Or they're going to reach out to the real estate agent and say, I don't know what to do here. What's my house worth? Right. So I networked heavily and taught all my students to work and get their leads from real estate agents, realtors, because they're the ones sitting down with the client. They're the ones determining, yeah, you know what, we got to sell and we can't, we're upside down because the agent ran the comps. The agent told them doing their job, we're going to have to attempt a short sale here. So I networked heavily with the agents to say, hey, look, when you do get one of these situations, let me review the deal because possibly I may want to buy it. I may want to put an offer in on the house, purchase home for my own investment, goals, whether that's to buy and hold, quick wholesale, fix and flip, whatever. Even create notes, right? We've even done that. So there's many as an investor accessing a property in the form of a short sale, getting it at a nice discount. It opens up numerous different exit strategies. But relying on the realtors to bring that to me, I never had to create a direct mail piece because, again, back then with the crash and post-crash, it was fine. Now, believe it or not, to this day, I still haven't done a direct mail piece. And even though I'm not doing a fraction, I'm doing 5-10% of what I used to as far as volume, but I'm a lot more specific and I cherry pick my deals now.
Yeah, that's smart.
I would take any deal before. I mean, of those 100 deals, I mean, maybe 40% of them were in the hood. They were $40,000 homes, but they were easy just to churn and burn, make 5-10 grand. I mean, we did a lot of volume. I also had a dozen negotiators working for me.
Yeah.
You can only maintain that pace for so long, and we have done over 1,000 homes, by the way. So, in my career. So that does include the co-partnering with students at all. Not that I personally, did them for full disclosure, but yeah, I've been involved and paid on over 1,000 short sale transactions, which is quite a bit, and yeah, and it was great. But the thing is even, the ones I'm working now, I cherry pick them because we've learned a lot. We've learned as things have changed, as the equities have come back, the banks are not giving anywhere near the discounts they used to. And in fact, what you'll find, and I don't know if you see this out by you, but when, let's say a short sale doesn't take place and the bank actually forecloses and now they're reselling it as an REO, I'm finding and seeing a lot of banks, which is still, I guess, shocking to me, they're actually hiring contractors and rehabbing the homes.
Yeah, they are.
That's crazy, dude. Like 10 years ago, you would have never heard of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you seeing that out by you too?
We are even in pre-foreclosure status, and we're seeing vacant homes. They're coming in and doing work, which is in my mind, that's not why banks get in the business. They get in the business
as investors.
Yes, it's in my opinion, it's quite obtuse of them to be doing that, because at the end of the day, they're losing money. They're losing money by having it sit, because as it's sitting, they're still having to pay their commercial line of credit on that asset. And in my thing, that's not good for the balance sheet to have that asset sitting out there and you're not collecting any type of revenue on it. So, there are some out there. We're seeing folks that just leave, just like they used to back in the day. They're just leaving, and it's causing issues with the sump pump. And you're causing flooding in the basements, and at the end of the day, that's going to start causing mold. As we're getting into the cold season now, it's probably not going to cause the type of mold that would happen in the summer, which would be extremely deadly type mold. From the black mold is going to cause the worst type of damage. And if that stuff gets into the floor joists and the floorboards, then you're going to have to start talking about foundational issues at that standpoint. So, a lot of these banks, yeah, they're not taking the discounts like they used to, but there are still discounts enough to where you can make really good profits.
Which is why I said exactly what I did. When I say cherry picking, that's not out of, certainly any level of arrogance. What I mean is that the market has shifted, the process has changed to the sense, they're willing to go in and rehab a house now. So you have to really build your case. You really have to say, it's not just, okay, here's a few, comps showing why I'm putting in my low offer. No. The more the better, right? The neighborhood crime statistics, a detailed contractor's repair estimate, all these other things that you really want to, build your case of why it makes sense, and it's in the bank's best interest to take a hit now, because the hit in the future could be longer, because like you said, they're holding costs, they're insuring the home. Then if they clean it up, or whether they just relist it as an REO, now they're paying 6% to the agent. They had to pay the sheriff to go and foreclose on it, right? So there's all these costs, which could all be avoided if you just take a little bit of a discount now. The other thing relative to that is really staying away from the low dollar homes. I relate it back to being an agent. If you're a real estate agent, you're going to put in the same amount of time to list and sell a $50,000 home in the hood than you are a $500,000 home. And so you're going to make 10 times the amount of commission on the $500,000 home for literally the same amount of work. The marketing, the showings, everything you have to do. So looking at that relative to investing, specifically with short sales, I've really been focusing more on I don't want to say luxury, but just the upper end, high average into the luxury, a lot of the jumbo loans, let's put it that way, because it's just more efficient, and I don't have to do as many deals, and it creates a better quality of life when you're not, running around like a maniac like I did for so many years. To work on just a good half a dozen deals, it's a good legitimate business. The other thing I'll share with you, and this is brand new, this is not brand new, it's been about 3 years, but we would always teach people, and what I would implement personally is, when you're analyzing a home for a short sale, you have to make sure they're in default at least one month, as we talked about, and you have to make sure there's negative equity. The house is worth more, of course, than they owe, worth less than they owe. Excuse me. I would I would just totally ignore a fact if let's say the house. Let's just use the other example. Let's say for some reason they've been paying off their mortgage. Maybe they sold the house and they had a nice chunk to put down. So the mortgage is only $150,000, but the house is worth $3. But they still got the divorce. They got cancer. They lost their job, and now they can't make the payments. Well, now what you have is what's called a high equity pre-foreclosure. I would completely want nothing to do with them, because I knew I couldn't do a short sale. But through a mutual, a business acquaintance of mine over in New Jersey, what I found out is there's a whole different model that works. And the way it will look, here's the long and short of it, because it's a little complex, but here's how it works. Reaching out to those people, again, who are in default, either through the realtor, or this is actually very effective to do direct mail campaigns, because once you're getting that notice of default, right, you can actually say, hey, look, you're at least 90 days in the hole here, and if nothing changes, the bank will foreclose. I mean, that's going to happen. So what do you want to do? The idea is to find people who actually want to stay in their home, right? They want to stay in their home. And what happens is most of these people will wait until the absolute last minute. And I'm sure you've seen this. They're hoping to get that loan mod. They're hoping to get that money from a relative, or whatever the case may be, get that new job and catch up on the back payments. Unfortunately, most times, as in 99% of the time, it's just not going to happen, right?
Right.
So what I tell them, and what we is, look, if they foreclose, not only will you lose your home and be out on the street, literally, your equity's gone.
Yeah.
So what we're willing to do is step in and purchase the home. We're actually only going to take what considered a finder's fee, a percentage, maybe 40, 50 grand, depending on the deal, of the equity. You keep the rest of the equity. You stay in the home with your family. You're going to basically, what we do is called a sale leaseback. So you're going to stay there and pay rent to me. And then after 18 to 24 months, give them the opportunity to repurchase the home at a set pre-agreed upon price, therefore retaining their equity. That year and a half, 2 years allows their credit to completely rehabilitate itself naturally without even going into credit repair. See, what we do is we don't just pay off their mortgage. We do a full debt analysis, and that's where I was getting back to that software that I'm looking into, and that's something on the side we should talk about. But we want to see, what are your car notes, what are your student loans, you owe money for your kids' braces, right? And get a full, complete picture of their debt, so that utilizing their equity, we won't do the deal unless they can stay in the home and be debt-free.
Yep.
Meaning we're going to pay off the mortgage, that 150 grand. We're going to pay off the car note. We're going to pay off the student loans. We're going to pay off all your credit cards, and we're going to get them debt free. Now, 18 months later, 2 years later, they have perfect credit just because they're debt free. So it's a natural process of, rehabilitating their credit. They're making payments that they can afford. People say, what if they don't have a job? They can afford it. Well, then we draw upon the equity in the house and we structure it out. We also will escrow 6 or 12 months of all your taxes, your insurance, and everything. So now they can go get that job. They can deal with their illness, right? A lot of people just want, hey, buy me a year. I'll stay here, rent from you for a year, and then I'm moving on anyway, right? And then if we sell the house, we split the equity, and they agree to that. Because remember the alternative, Jason. If they do nothing and bury their head in the sand, they lose every penny and they're on the street.
Right.
This is a way to save their dignity, to keep their home, let their children finish the school in a couple of years, or whatever the case may be. So it gives people options, and it's a high equity free pre-foreclosure buyout is kind of what we termed it. And I'm not, people have approached me, and I'm working with different people around the country in this model. And, why don't you create a course again and get back into doing that? Those days are over for me. I don't want to be a course creator, educator anymore. This is for my own personal investing. You know what I mean?
Right.
One thing I'll tell you, and that does keep a lot of people out of the game, is that you do need to have a good amount of working capital. So if you're going to go in and pay off the bank and all the debts, you either need to have the money yourself, or you need to have access to some private lenders, not hard money, long-term money, 2-year money, private lenders to be able to do this. I think most seasoned and experienced investors have access, not that I would use my own cash anyway, but to these private lenders, show them a nice return, give them a good 10, 12%, they're happy. The people stay in the home, they're happy, right? And then one thing people will say is, well, what if they default? What if they can't keep it? Well, again, we'll just go ahead and sell the home and split up the equity. We'll split it 50-50. We're not equity stripping. We're not trying to take advantage of people. We're actually giving them the best possible solution for an unfortunate situation that they're in. And the best part about it, Jason, for me, and having done all those short sales and literally fought with the banks, for all these years, there's no more fighting. The bank's getting a full and complete payoff. We call one of our processors will call and get a complete payoff. We don't negotiate that. We're paying a complete payoff. So because it's not a short sale, right? What happens? There's no restriction. One of the unfortunate things with a short sale, as existing and current legislation is, they have to leave the house. They can't stay there. You can't, I always said all these years and all these deals, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to do a short sale and rent it back to the people? They don't want to leave. Their kids, they play with the neighbors. They do the barbecues. Why do they have to leave? That never made sense to me. It just, I could never understand that. But in this case, the bank has no right now because they're getting a complete payoff. It is not a short sale. There's no discount. So now I bought the home as the investor. I could rent it to whoever I want, including the people who are the homeowners. So that's something I'm excited about. And that's something that, I'm working here locally and also rolling out with different people, ex-students and things around the country. But I'm very frank with them. I tell them, if you want to work with me in this model, as long as you have access to private capital, I have a system. We have all the spreadsheets, the algorithm to do the calculations. We can do this. You just have to be able to, number one, uncover the deals, and number two, bring some private funding to the table. But if you can do that, I'm partnering with people around the country.
Nice. I like that, man. I like it. I like it a lot. No, this has been a really, really great show, man. Lots of informative information about distressed properties and assets, and some really great strategies that our listeners can take advantage of. Let me ask you this, man. As we're starting to wrap up here, what is a really good, business-centered book that you would recommend, either be audible or physical? What's a good book that you've read over the years that you keep coming back to, and it's had a big impact on your life?
So for many years, I would reference one book, and I don't want to leave it out because it's been that important in my life and critical to my success. So I will swing back to that. So I'm actually going to give you two. But prior to maybe 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I found out about a book on Audible, and it's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And it's not just a book for business. It's a book for life. Yeah. And it's about mindset. It's about overcoming, your own demons, if you will. It's about learning how to push through pain. It's about learning how to really find that inner self drive and discipline, if you will. And it's one of the most amazing books. And I highly recommend the audiobook because I don't know if you heard the audiobook, but what's so cool about it, I bought my son's the real book with the hardcover, which is great. But, in between the chapters, it's a podcast interview. Yep. So they actually interview David Goggins, and he goes deeper into the concept. So it's like 14 hours or something crazy for this book. But I highly recommend. It's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. But the other one I was going to say, and I would have said this if, prior to 7 months ago, is Pitch Anything by Aaron Claff. Our good friend Nathan Jurwitz recommended that to us many years ago, and I've probably read that book at least 4, if not 5 times. And the frame control and the concept of another book, once again, that it doesn't just apply to business. If you understand how the positioning works and frame control with your children, with your spouse, it helps you to just get along with people better and understand from a psychological point why people do what they do. So Pitch Anything by Aaron Claff would be a very close second.
Those are good. Yeah, Pitch Anything's great book, and then Can't Hurt Me. That's a really good book.
Crazy.
I recommend the Audible, like you said, because when it's time to mow the lawn, and obviously right now is not the time to do it, but I was able to knock it out in like 3 sessions because it takes me about 3 hours to mow the lawn.
Or if you're in line at the grocery store, you could be listening to it, right?
Oh man, yeah, absolutely in the grocery store.
At the gym, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great book. Highly recommend it. Both of them are really great books. So Brian, for people that want to connect with you, man, what's the best way to connect with the Italian Stallion?
So I have a website up. I haven't, to be completely honest, I used to use that more for marketing and selling the coaching, the course and coaching, which I don't do anymore. But it's investorentourage.com. I am in the process of redoing the site now that I no longer use Just for Men in my hair, and you can actually see the grays. It's time to update all my pictures. So I'm going to go see our mutual friend, Scott Braun in New York, and get some pictures done for the blog. I'm going to start updating new content. I want to really focus more on these high equity pre-foreclosure buyouts and do some training videos and let people know how they can get involved in that, either with me or on their own. So it's investorentourage.com. And there is an opt-in there for people to get a free deal analyzer. So if they are interested in analyzing a short sale, do I wholesale it or do I fix and flip it? Well, there's a nice simple analyzer in there where you can put your deal in there, and I'm notified of anybody who opts in, and then of course we'll be able to communicate with each other.
Sweet. So investorentourage.com. Go check that out. Brian, any parting words for our listeners right now?
No, the only parting words, and I guess because this topic today was about the distressed market, is that you have to understand that the distressed market will never go away. And I think that's the most important thing for people to understand. And yes, like you said, we don't know when that next correction will be. And so when it does happen, and it will, short sales will increase, probably nowhere near to the level they did. But it is a niche. It is a very niche way to invest in real estate. And because very few people do it, it's like one of my initial mentors always told me. He said, Brian, if the whole crowd is going that way, you go that way.
Yeah.
And it's like anything in life. So if you become proficient at areas of investing, which is the purpose of this podcast, that other people aren't willing to do. Not that it has to be your full-time strategy, by the way, but at least if you have that as an arrow in your quiver, and when you run across that pre-foreclosure deal, you know what to do and you know how to analyze it, you're just going to be a better investor because you're going to be better educated and you're going to be more advanced than most of the people running around, pretending they're investors. Let's put it that way. Right?
No, I agree with you, Brian. Thanks for being on the show today. For folks that would like to get additional information, have any questions, send us an email, support@jasonluchesi.com. That's SUPPORT, the @ symbol, and then my last name or Jason, JASONLUCCHESI.com. So support@jasonluchesi.com. Hit us up if you need anything whatsoever. And Brian, thanks again for being on the show, man. Have a great day, everybody.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.